Hey, what's going on there, guitar community? It's the Guitar Story, and here with you today. Thanks for checking in. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about Peter Green. A lot of you have probably already know. It's been a few days already, but Peter passed away a few days ago. He passed away in his sleep at home in England, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things you may not know about Peter because honestly, the guy's got a history that it's both really, really interesting and at times really, really sad. So, in an unscripted way, because I feel like I don't want to make this too slick of a production, I want to kind of talk about him from the heart. And that's kind of why I'm doing it this way. But Peter Green started in the British blues rock scene in the mid 60s, and his first really big gig was replacing Eric Clapton and John Mayall's Blues Breakers. And everybody knows about the Blues Breakers album with Eric Clapton, but the next album after that, after the Beano album, was called Hard Road. That album is just as good, to be honest with you, and that featured Peter Green rather than Eric Clapton. And Peter then kind of morphed this, kind of took people from this band and that band, and he formed Fleetwood Mac. Now, to me, that's the thing that surprises the most people because everybody knows Fleetwood Mac, right? They know Rumors, they know, all the hits that they had through the 70s and 80s, and they're one of the biggest bands, in rock and roll history, right? But what a lot of people don't know is that Fleetwood Mac was actually formed by Peter Green. And you may ask, well, why did he call it Fleetwood Mac? He didn't put his own name in there. Why didn't he call it Fleetwood Green or Fleetwood Green Mac or whatever? Well, even then, Peter was an extremely, I don't want to call him shy, but he just didn't like the spotlight. He wasn't the type of person who wanted fame necessarily. He wanted the band to be successful, though, and he named it after the rhythm section because he wanted Mick Fleetwood on drums, he wanted John McVie on bass, Fleetwood Mac. So the band began as a straight ahead, balls to the wall blues band, and their stuff, their first three albums, they're just incredible. They had a number one hit with Albatross, which was a slow instrumental, which is just, mind blowing. In those days, you'd think, how the hell did they have a number one hit with that? But it's a great song. Don't get me wrong. It's just, you don't think of it as a pop single kind of number one hit. But it is a beautiful song, obviously written by Green. He also wrote Black Magic Woman. Everybody thinks it's a Santana song. Santana did cover Peter Green's Black Magic Woman, but they'd actually had a hit with it in Britain. It went to number 4. And so, they had a lot of success. A lot of success. The Fleetwood Mac was an extremely well-respected band in England, but what happened was Peter started to descend into drugs very heavily, especially LSD. And Peter Green is a bona fide LSD casualty of the 60s. It just doesn't get any more simple than that. The kind of shunning of fame became a much more intense feeling to Peter. He started to absolutely want to give away all of his wealth. He didn't want to keep any of his money. And he actually started to get upset, like kind of that paranoid schizophrenia that starts happening. He started to blame the band for not giving away their wealth. Well, they were happy that they were successful musicians, and obviously when you're successful doing anything, you making money, it's your money. You can obviously be generous and donate some of it, but Peter wanted them to donate it all, and he was coming up with these crazy schemes on how we can give our money away and all that stuff like that. And it caused a rift in the band, but they continued to have success. The band continued to make records and have success and play a lot of great live shows. There's a lot of great live material for the early Fleetwood Mac. If you're really interested in getting into it, I would say listen to the live stuff because it's just incredible. So I think the turning point John McVie always talks about in a lot of his interviews is when they were touring in Europe. They made a stop in Berlin, and when they got off the plane, there were these people there waiting for Peter. They all kind of agree that somehow they were waiting for him. And they took him away and took him to this house way out in the country. And it was basically a hippie commune. And they pumped him full of LSD. And I believe the road manager went with him. I forget his name, but they both, after that time at the commune, were never the same. The band said that, you know, whatever they did to them there was the end of what, you know, the band had meant to them previously. So it's very sad. You know, obviously, LSD is one of those things. I mean, I've never done drugs, so I can't tell you anything about it. But obviously, you know, we have all the stories of the Beatles, and we have the stories of a lot of the other bands from the 60s taking LSD and opening their minds and recording some of their best music and things like that. Great. But obviously, in Peter's case, it didn't go well for him. And it caused him to fall into drug-induced schizophrenia. And basically, the 70s were just wilderness years for him. He didn't even have a home, people. He didn't even have a home. This is one of the most successful musicians of the late 60s. And he couldn't even rub two nickels together. He basically went from house to house. He took weird jobs. He was the gardener at a cemetery. He was a hospital orderly. He basically just floated around through life for 10 years almost. And had a couple of episodes, ended up being committed a few times. Actually underwent electroshock therapy. So the guy just had a terrible time of it. And then, luckily, a couple of friends were able to lift him out of his depression and get him back on the road, get him back playing music, get him back to being Peter Green. But unfortunately, Peter himself was never the same. So, you know, you can tell in interviews more recently, you know, he just isn't all there. And it's very sad to see. But, you know, now that he's passed, we can look back on everything and we can see, you know, both the decline, but we can also celebrate the prime years, you know. That's what we want to really remember as guitarists, is those prime years that he had with Fleetwood Mac. And, you know, to be honest with you, I didn't really get exposed to Peter Green until more recently, when I was actually looking through Apple Music. So the great thing about Apple Music, or like Spotify or any of those things that you might have, is that, you know, when you listen to a band, all their other albums come up and you can flip through them. And when I'm flipping through them and I'm like, Fleetwood Mac, 1968. Like, they were around in 60. I thought their first album was Fleetwood Mac in 19... Whatever the one that they recorded with, you know, with Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks. That's how stupid I was. I had no idea. And then I went down and I found this other album and I listened to it and I was like, that's Fleetwood Mac? Like, what? You know, and then I started, you know, Wikipedia, pull that up, start looking into it, finding out about Peter Green, watching YouTube videos, basically the holy shit moment, you know, of like, wow, how did I possibly miss this? I was just not exposed to it, you know? A lot of times in music, especially in your formative years, you get exposed to things by other things. Like, I got exposed to The Who when I was watching the Rolling Stones Rock and Roll Circus, which, if you've never seen that, it's crazy. You can find it on YouTube. And The Who did A Quick One While He's Away, and that song got me obsessed with The Who. Like, I was obsessed for years, and I have all their albums, and I love The Who. But, you know, that was basically the beginning of that. You have to get exposed to it sometimes. I was just never exposed to it. And so, you know, that's on me, but sometimes you just don't know. You don't know what you don't know, right? So, yeah, now just really, you know, gobbled all that up, and now it's like on my regular playlists and things like that, and just, the stuff that they did. If you've never listened to it, please go and listen to it for the love of God. Don't just let Peter Green be a name, one of those, yeah, that's a shame, and you just don't ever really look into it. If you're a music fan, especially of blues, you should look into Fleetwood Mac before the Fleetwood Mac that we know of. But that being said, that's kind of Peter Green's story, and in a nutshell, I am working on an album. I'm working on a video where I'm going to be paying tribute to Peter Green in a more scripted way. It's going to be more documentary, but I just wanted to kind of get my initial thoughts on tape first, and to just kind of talk about it. And please feel free to put your memories of Peter in the comments. Other than that, I really don't have anything else to say. The guy is a legend. I will go out on a limb, and I will say that I have one more thing to say, and it's a big one. Peter Green is the best blues guitarist of the British rock scene in the 60s. Better than Eric Clapton. Miles better. So, that's how good he is. Listen to him. You're welcome. Rest in peace, Peter Green.